All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Reimagining Food Rescue, How to Strengthen Food Recovery in a Complex Climate. So I'm Jessica Regan, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Food Mesh. We're a food recovery organization, a business that helps businesses and governments find alternative uses for their food. And today I am absolutely delighted to welcome a very diverse, robust panel, which I'll introduce momentarily. Before we begin, I just want to remind everybody that this session is being recorded and it will be available on the website. Please do mute your phones. And for Q&A, we'll have some at the end. So at the end, we'll be able to open it up to the audience, and please ask your questions. I think there's some mics available. All right, so let's jump into it. So today we are going to start with Jennifer, and Jennifer is doing lots of different things. I'm not even sure where to start, but she works with 412 Rescue, and she's doing some new initiatives that she's probably going to talk to about right now. Over to you, Jen.
All right, yes I am. Let's see if I can figure out the slide clicker. Yep, there we go. Okay, the and, not the or. So if you were in the opening session this morning listening to Dana talk about the sort of state of the union of food recovery, you know that we're in a space where things are happening, right? And people are starting to understand that food waste, surplus food, presents an opportunity, especially in the realm of tackling food insecurity, right? And so the Biden administration in September, I think 2022, if I can see that far, released their national strategy on hunger, nutrition, and health, and they mentioned food waste, reducing barriers to food recovery in it. And then last year, they released their national strategy for reducing food loss and waste, and clearly, they recognize they need to increase the infrastructure for food recovery, which is great news for all of us in the food recovery business, right? And yet, and this is actually literally the screenshot. It is now missing, unfortunately. We're still seeing a little bit of a disconnect. So at the White House Conference on Hunger and Nutrition and Health, the summary, which is all that's available now, mentions only SNAP, WIC, EBT, and child nutrition programs, which are programs, which are definitely key, right? But missing from that is food recovery. And yet we know that food recovery offers a really great opportunity. From ReFed's website, which also I'll give a plug for, is amazing. There's great stuff on there if you haven't checked it out. 4.6 billion meals for people in need could be provided if we reduce food waste, if we rescue that food. There's enough food being wasted to end hunger. And donating food is at the top of the hierarchy or the scale. It's not a pyramid anymore. It's at the top of the scale. It is what is preferable. And yet, and we're seeing legislation, right? So the Zero Food Waste Coalition, legislative tracker, we're seeing a lot of state bills happen. There's some action at the federal level. This is just in 2025. These are bills introduced in 2025, not all time. So again, a lot of action, a lot of things happening. But as I mentioned, there's a disconnect. So this report came out, I think last year, and there's some issues with it. It's not 100% accurate, but that's okay. I think the point is still really valid. The report said that of the states that had food waste bans, only one was successful. The rest were not successful in reducing food waste. And the state that was successful was Massachusetts because they created infrastructure. But the infrastructure they created was compost. So again, we're not seeing a focus on creating an infrastructure to rescue food to keep it out of the landfill. But that's still at the top of the pyramid. So why are we not focusing on how to create that infrastructure? And think back to the White House Conference on Food and Nutrition. There was nobody there from food recovery. It was folks in the charitable food system, right? It's Feeding America. It is not people who are focusing on food recovery. So what does it look like to create the infrastructure we need in order to maximize food recovery, to divert food from the waste stream, get it to people who are facing food insecurity, and actually address hunger? To do that, we need to understand food rescue. What most people think of when we say food recovery is the single food rescue, right? The act of a food pantry going to a grocery store, picking up their donation, taking it back, and giving it to their parishioners. This is a food rescue, absolutely. It's part of the ecosystem. But this is really focusing on the agency and the needs of the agency. When we talk about food recovery, what we mean is focusing on a systems approach to reducing both food waste and food insecurity. And that is a different approach, and it takes different systems, and the infrastructure to support that is going to be very different from the infrastructure we have that does not think about this from a systems approach. And food recovery is very unique. And so if you think about it, food waste happens in this highly distributed network. It's happening all over the place in big and small amounts, from a tray of sandwiches to, 100 pallets of something, or however many pounds of apples Luis was just talking to me about that they're going to rescue, right? It is a mammoth scale and very variable. And it happens 7 days a week, and 90% of it is fresh, right? Which makes it really difficult to rescue and get to people before it goes bad. And so there's a lot of discontinuity between what it takes to actually make that happen and what people think food recovery is and how to support it. And you can see this. If you listen to all of the food recovery organizations that come to these conferences that talk, they're all talking about the same problems, right? But then when you listen or look at the food rescue infrastructure grants, and you look at the laws that are being passed, they don't really understand what it means to address all of those problems. And really, food recovery as an industry is pretty nascent. Up to this point, we've been operating, we kind of know each other, we see each other at ReFed every year, right? But we're kind of scattered. There's no cohesive network. There's competitors, right? We're competing for resources. We maybe have competing solutions. But what would happen if that weren't the case? And so a couple years ago, 2 years ago, in fact, I was on a panel at Waste Expo with the folks from Replate, Carrot, and Copia. Ostensibly, we are all competitors. But we had this aha moment when we realized that what we really were facing were the same obstacles, and that we were not competitors. We were, in fact, fish swimming upstream. We were at if anyone was at the locks yesterday, we saw the salmon trying to swim upstream, right? We were all trying to swim upstream separately. So what would happen if we focus on the and, not the or? If we work together as an industry to address the systemic problems and to provide a voice that can inform on food recovery. And so we started talking, right? We had this crazy idea. Like at the time, 2 years ago, this was just unheard of. We were all in our own silos and we weren't chatting, but we started meeting. And when we started meeting, we first were sharing really shared pain points. There was a lot of kvetching, right? We were facing the same obstacles, exclusivity agreements, policy roadblocks, funding difficulties. But that quickly became shared opportunities. We realized that if we worked together, we could be more effective in addressing those pain points and turning them into the infrastructure that we need to scale food recovery and to make a dent in both food waste and food insecurity. We also discovered along the way that we had a lot of shared values. The people in the food recovery ecosystem are all focused on both reducing food waste and feeding people, and really are looking at this from a collaborative standpoint, right? We want to work together. We all share the same passions. We all share a focus on fairness and justice and partnership. And so we started meeting around 2023, and again, pain points, kvetching, maybe we could work together, opportunity. And what we came up with is the National Food Recovery Association. So welcome to the National Food Recovery Association. We are launching, this is our big announcement, we are launching the National Food Recovery Association this year. I'm not going to read all of these, you can kind of read them, and they're on our website, so you can go to our website and check it out. But really, what the National Food Recovery Association is a nonprofit that is focused on advancing food recovery as an industry, right, as a solution. And it's member-driven because nobody knows food recovery as well as the people that are working in it and doing it day to day. The folks that are eligible would be anybody that's really working in food recovery, that's in a food recovery organization, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit, or individuals that are supportive of it. The organizational structure will have voting members. The voting members will be the organizations. We are doing that so that it's a flat model, so that no one organization that might be super big or have a super big budget can override the interests and the power of an organization that only has 2 employees. This should be about food recovery industry, and all players are welcome to contribute and to have a voice. And our mission is to advance the edible food recovery industry, again, through collaborative, solution-focused initiatives, and to identify and support industry best practices. So, and again, this goes back to when there's a conference on hunger, food recovery should be at the table. Food recovery has the opportunity to make a huge dent, an effective, impactful, and affordable economic dent in hunger in the United States. And so we want to be that voice. Our early priorities include creating a robust, searchable member directory. One of the things we hear is that big businesses, they want a one-stop shop for their food recovery needs, right? They don't want to have to go to 27 organizations. Well, here we can create a directory so that, Albertsons has one place to go to find a food recovery organization wherever they have a grocery store. Best practice guidelines and data and metric standards. Nobody should be inventing this wheel again. We've all done it, right? Everybody in this room that does food recovery has already invented the wheel. Let's work together so nobody else has to do that. And as we grow and create new best practices and advances, that should be shared information because, again, this is something we're doing that is good, and it should not be gatekept. And our vision, again, is to elevate the voices of people in the food recovery industry, to be that organization, to have a seat at the table so that our voices are reflected in the policy that is supposedly lifting up our industry. And so it actually does lift up our industry. The structure will be that our members, again, will be driving this. They will decide what our priorities are. They will vote on the platform every year to make sure that our programs are reflecting the needs of the industry. And then the board of directors will simply be overseeing that and making sure that the work gets done. So I would invite you all to join us, to check us out on social media, to follow us. And then if you are a food recovery organization or somebody in the industry, we would love for you to join us. You can go to our website, and there's a place to fill in your email. Dana, that's correct, right? You can fill in your email, and we will get you on the list. Yes, that's correct. And I would also like to, while I'm up here, just thank the folks that have been showing up for this, have been coming to the meetings and been doing the work. Dana Siles is an absolute workhorse. She's amazing. Sammy is, I don't know if she's in the room. If you're in the room and you're on the board of directors, can you raise your hand? Start there. Hi, Sammy. All right, if you are a member or you've been coming to meetings, if you can also raise your hand. Thank you, everybody, for all of the hard work you've done. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. That's absolutely amazing and super incredible. So I guess it is a call out and a call to action for any organization, for profit or nonprofit, which is great because there's a lot of different solutions and services that can together really make an impact. And Jen, just one question, because I know there's probably the audience has a lot. Are you finding that collaboration is creating that united front to help the food waste generators unlock more food? Like if there is that collaboration, do you find that there's more confidence knowing that there's less competition amongst the nonprofits?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we've already seen a lot of partnerships and collaborations come out of this, just our initial talks. And so, we're finding a lot more affinity with organizations that we can sort of pass it on and waste less food. And then I believe also in terms of solution providers, donors, food donors, we haven't quite gotten there yet, but I know they're really excited to hear about this opportunity. Yeah. And then for best practices, which I feel like you mentioned, but maybe not.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
sharing that, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and that's one of the other things about how
Oh.
do you share and unlock more food, right? If you're able
Right,
to
right.
kind of,
And so also having those best practices that organizations can adhere to will also give donors the confidence that they need to donate food to organizations. They don't have to go through and do like a heavy vetting of every single food recovery organization. If they can look and just see, okay, now I understand the standards, I understand what the food safety protocols are, I understand what food rescue is, it will give them the confidence to do so.
yeah, which is going to, yeah, you need that trust. That's the linchpin for everything to work, right? And so more collaboration, more rigor, more organization, I think is the key. So that's awesome. So great to hear. All right, next up, we're going to switch over to Evan Ehlers, who's the founder and executive director of Sharing Access. And that's a national nonprofit rescuing surplus from wholesalers, grocers, and since inception has diverted 100 million meals worth of food. So Evan, over to you.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. And yeah, I just am really excited to have a conversation today. I'll give you a brief background on Sharing Excess. We've been around for about 7 years. We're based in Philadelphia, New York City, and most recently Detroit. We work across the country to be able to rescue and redistribute food. We put together some photos, but I originally started this organization while I was a student in college with leftover food in my dining account, and I just cannot believe what it's turned into today. I had a very basic understanding of food waste and food insecurity when I was a student, and basically I decided to do something about it. I had all this food I wasn't using. I swiped it all out, salads, pizzas, sandwiches, and I put it in the back of my car, and I started giving it away, and I was totally surprised and saddened at how quickly a line formed from the back of my car, being a stranger on the street giving out food in the center of Philadelphia. And it broke my heart, but also it was nice to do a little something that felt like it was making a difference. And it's been a crazy journey since then. We have really focused on food rescue at a particular point in the supply chain that I think has been difficult for decades to be able to rescue. I put a couple photos in here just so you can see the level that we really focus on, which is these terminal produce markets. They're located in the port cities of the United States. Basically, I drove by this building for years in Philly. It's like this 700,000 square foot refrigerated warehouse that just throws away ungodly amounts of food. And at first, we didn't know like how we could help because all of the excess was in these big pallets of produce where maybe there's 1 or 2 bad apples in the bunch, but most of it was still edible. And it's very difficult to be able to turn this food around. As Jen was saying, perishable food, you have to work through it really quickly. So we pitched this idea to this huge warehouse. We said, if you give us a little bit of your warehouse space, we can streamline this process and create a food donation program that can save you a lot of money and feed a lot of people. And over the last 3 years, we've been able to implement this like sorting and gleaning operation inside of this market. We've cut the organic waste by over 70%. And we've turned this building from the biggest food waster in the city to the single largest source of food donations in Philadelphia. Thank you. We have an incredible team who does this. I put in most of my work back in the grandma car days where I was picking up food from Trader Joe's. And since then, we figured out how to scale and make sure that this food is accessible to other organizations. So we started in Philly. It went really well there, distributed over 28 million pounds from this one building. And then now we're serving all these organizations. And then we went to New York. There's huge produce market here. It's like 3 times bigger than Philly. They came down, saw what we were doing in the Philly market, and they were like, hey, this is great. We have probably triple the amount of waste and maybe a tenth of the space. So we kind of set up in the equivalent of like a New York City studio apartment in this market. We're like a little rose growing out of the crack in the concrete here. And we were able to do the same thing. This was really important for us because this was our first time trying to scale something that worked in one city and totally different contexts, different city, different communities, figuring out how do we make this food accessible? How do we find, partners like Harlem Grown, who's doing incredible work for thousands of people and make this a resource for them. And now we've been able to redistribute just under 20 million pounds of food in the last year and a half from this market, and we get it all out. It's a labor of love. Whatever we get in, same day, we're turning it around and getting it out. And now we're serving over 1 million New Yorkers every year. And these are all the organizations that we're working with. And you could just quickly flip through the rest here. Like, all the organizations that we partner with are the reason why we do this. I mean, they're incredible efforts that just need this like supply connection to be able to distribute millions and millions of pounds of this food that otherwise would have been going to waste. It's more important than ever when we're looking at these federal cuts. Last thing I'll say is, in the spirit of collaboration, if you could just go back one or two there, sorry. I just want to shout out Metro Food Rescue here. We met at Refed last year, an incredible food rescue organization in Detroit that's doing great work, and there's a huge terminal produce market in this, the slide before this. It's this same kind of thing in the same city, the same problem, and it's logistically difficult to be able to get this food. We partnered up with Metro Food Rescue. Last week, we just launched. In the first 2 months, we've been able to redistribute over 650,000 pounds of produce. And it was awesome. We got to hear from an organization that said they were going to close their doors because of the federal cuts until we were able to start supporting them with fresh food from this facility. So that's the long and short of the work that we're doing right now. I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation and offer any insight or guidance that might be helpful to folks in this room.
All right. Thanks, Evan. So just a couple questions. So, the sheer volume of the food that you're moving, obviously is a logistical triumph. So what are how did you kind of crack the back of that and overcome those barriers? And what kind of tips would you have for others working in this space?
I would say the first and foremost focus of ours was actually figuring out what works for the food businesses. Of course, we're here to feed people and to save this food, but ultimately you have to kind of like bend over backwards to be able to support the needs of what major food businesses need to be able to donate. Like, if they call you at 3 a.m., you got to pick up at 3 a.m. And that's difficult. It's really difficult, and it could put a strain on any operation. So I'd say really focusing on like what works for their bottom line. How could you speak the language of a food business that is trying to save money? Yes, they want to do good, but their first priority is how do we stay in business? How do you align with that so that it works for them? And then you'll get enormous amounts of food from catering to that, main priority of theirs.
Right. Okay. So fitting into their model to reduce friction rather than you imposing your model onto them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I'd say we're like solution agnostic.
Yeah.
If we said we only pick up food from grocery stores and we only use vans, we would not have 90% of the partners that we have today.
Yeah.
And so just saying, okay, what does it take to solve this problem, and how can we sort of flow like water to figure it out?
Flow like water. So smart. Fantastic. And then this morning, for those who were at the cooking demo, influencers was a big topic, and how to work with influencers and the benefits of that. You yourself have quite the influencer. Tell us a little bit more about the role social media and storytelling has benefited your organization and helped scaling the awareness.
Yeah, it's helped a lot. It's given us a megaphone to the world. We created a partnership with the YouTuber Mr. Beast. And we've made 2 videos together now. About a month or 2 months ago, we made a video on Jimmy's main channel that got over 60 million views, and people all over the world started reaching out saying, hey, how can we partner? How can we help? It brought us to Colombia. My mom was born in Colombia, and I got to bring her back there for the first time in 40 years recently. And she got to see how she can, be a part of helping the same community that she experienced food insecurity in. It's deeply meaningful, and the reach that social media can have to get you what you need is unbelievably powerful. And I would say it's a matter of how do you make what we're doing like interesting in a way that's not just interesting to the people that are in this room. It's very hard to do, and I will say we're still trying to figure it out. But ultimately, I think this idea of like solving two problems at once is a really interesting concept, no matter, if it's food insecurity or food waste. This is a massive inefficiency, and it's a story that needs to be told. And I think everybody here has the same experience of like sharing the statistics and realizing that most people don't know how much food goes to waste and how much of it is still edible, and that, if we took 10% of it, and we could feed everybody who's hungry, right? So really breaking it down in those chunks that make people be like, wow, this is the dumbest problem on earth.
Yeah, definitely. I think if there's only one good thing I might say about food waste is that it's a unifying topic. Everyone agrees it's a dumb problem, and every human on the planet can, on a visceral level, resonates with food waste is bad. And so, yeah, it's great to know that the influencers are helping, and it was just very interesting to hear the two this morning just talk about how to work, align your organization to benefit, and using the social media. So fantastic. That's awesome. Congratulations. Okay, we're going to shift gears from the innovators and entrepreneurs over to the innovators in industry. So maybe we'll start with Rachel. So Rachel is the senior manager at PCC Markets, and her role is she works in partnership with local organizations for the last 6 years and doing some really interesting stuff on Growing for Good. But I know you've got a couple of really interesting things in addition to what you're doing with food rescue. You also are thinking kind of outside the box in terms of what you're doing with products that can't be rescued through the food donation program, and also working with farms and connecting to food rescue agencies. So maybe if you want to kind of talk about those different things and the things that kind of light you up in your work.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Rachel. I'm at PCC Community Markets. For those of you who aren't familiar, PCC is a grocery co-op owned by its members. We are the largest grocery co-op in the country and also accountable to a triple bottom line, so the environmental and social bottom line as well as financial. That was a big opening.
Yeah, sorry.
There's a lot of our partners in this room today, so thank you for all of you showing up. You know I hate public speaking, so you being here is supportive and adding a little bit of stress. I appreciate you all. Let's, out of that list, is there one?
Let's start with the croutons.
Okay, croutons.
go there.
Was anyone on the Fair Start field trip yesterday? Yay, hey. So in grocery rescue or grocery recovery, I'm sure this is a common topic for many of you. Day-old artisan bread, while delightful when we buy it fresh from the bakery, by the end of the day is not quite as desirable of a donation product. In around 2019, we were doing a big assessment of our grocery recovery program, and we're hearing from partners going out to see their facilities and actually seeing, at the time it was a private label PCC baguette that we made with a local bakery, Macrina Bakery. While you're in Seattle, please go to Macrina as well as PCC. We're there and seeing their compost bins and their trash bins full of private label baguettes. And as you go up and touch them, it's like they're baseball bats. So we're seeing the same thing in our own stores. Our staff is also feeling a lot of pressure around, we don't want to be giving this food to the food bank partner. They don't want this, and we're pushing it on them. And so we're keeping it in our own compost. So we're seeing this issue with bread. At a local Seattle Public Utilities held this series of innovation labs back in 2019, and the founder of Macrina happened to be there. She was so passionate about finding innovative solutions that this conversation around backhauling and repurposing, at that time it was this specific baguette. This conversation, like, who's made croutons at home? I thought it would be easy. I've made croutons at home too. Turns out it took about 4 years. We just launched this product in all PCCs this spring with Fair Start as the partner who is actually producing the crouton. So every day at each of the PCCs, in 2 weeks there'll be 16. Right now there's 15 stores. Macrina drops off fresh bread and never leaves with an empty tote. So they're actually backhauling. At this point, we're working with 3 different SKUs that they backhaul every day, bring back to their central space, freeze, and then Fair Start picks up twice a week. Fair Start then, they're a job training program locally. They're using this product to train about 300 people a year going through their program. Then the croutons are then brought back up to our central kitchen and distributed out to stores. So that's Again, sounds easy, and there's been so many things that have happened in this industry in the world in the past 4 years, and even the simple things like that initial private label baguette we no longer carry, but we've found different breads that do this. Oh,
Yeah, that's incredible because I know that donation dumping, the term is like, okay, well we donate to these charity partners, but food bread is often in excess, and being very mindful of that and saying find another route for that, I think is really great, and also recognizing that there's another stream of products or industry or solution providers, which is upcyclers, and connecting. There's the donation stream, which is fantastic. There's the discount apps, but there's also the rise of the upcyclers. We just connected a grocery store with folks that the orange peel rinds after a juice bar. Animals can't have it. Charities obviously are not going to take it, but connect them to an upcycler. And then again, it's part of that circular economy, being able to repurpose it, put it back into the retail, and be economically viable again. That's amazing. And so kind of what's the long term? Are you hoping to expand it to other food types or continue to double down on that? What's your plans with that?
I think that might be more of a question for Fair Start potentially, but they've really looked at this model now as what else they can do. It's diversified their funding stream, which, as we all know, is so essential right now. So through the spring launch, which actually did not go super smoothly, but because of that, some of the leadership from the deli went out and spent time with Fair Start, and through those visits, they formed this really beautiful relationship, and Fair Start now will be making all the sandwiches for our new PCC in downtown Seattle. And that only happened because things didn't go well. So it's kind of an interesting, I don't know what's exactly next, but where the relationship's really solid. First Start's also talking with some local organizations. One of them actually reclaims local fruit. I'm having a moment where I can't believe I'm forgetting the name right now. Apologies to them. And they're doing some work for the Seattle public school system with locally grown apples. So there's some interesting.
There's learnings, and there's oftentimes when you do have those false starts, you just have to continue to innovate and create and pivot, and that's what makes innovators so important, right? You don't give up on the problem. You just have to look at a different way of tackling it. And then let's go higher up the food supply chain. Obviously, that's working downstream and diversion. Now, you also have growing for good. So tell us a little bit about that. And
Yeah, Growing for Good. So PCC is a really, it's 72 years old, really established grocery recovery program. Shout out to Food Donation Connection, who's here today. Wonderful partners in that program. In the beginning of COVID, if you're able to let yourself go back to March 2020, the way people were shopping at that time, our daily donations dropped significantly, specifically across the board, but specifically in fresh produce. At the same time, the need from our partners, at that time we were working with about 45 different neighborhood-based agencies, were experiencing such high amounts of need. So they're reaching out to us asking like what could be possible. During that moment, the Neighborhood Farmers Markets, who manages a number of local farmers markets in Seattle, they closed, all the restaurants closed, so they were faced with a tremendous amount of product and farmers that needed to get that product to consumers very quickly. With the help of Harvest Against Hunger, and David from Harvest Against Hunger is here today. I'm shouting you all out so people will go talk to you after. We quickly pivoted a long-standing program that PCC had with fundraised money, and started doing forward contracting with farms locally who those contracts are made directly with the hunger relief. So that was done through a series of surveying and matching. What are you growing? Where could you deliver? What is your clientele looking for? When could you receive? And at the time, we thought this was going to be a Band-Aid. And now we're in our 6th year. That program's grown quite a bit. This year we have 20 local farms and 26 hunger relief agencies. We're working with mutual aid groups, meal programs, more traditional neighborhood food banks or food pantries. And one of the things that really makes this different is that forward contracting piece with the farmers. So they're centered in this program as much as the end consumer is. It's not just about getting them food, but also about finding, again, like stabilizing markets and finding new opportunities. from a financial standpoint to support our regional food system. And then the third piece that's been really unique is it's been, for the most part, like 98% community fundraised. And that's allowed us to really respond to the many crises that we keep facing together in a really human-centered way and nimble in a way that grants haven't always allowed.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, as the topic is kind of reimagining food rescue, donation is one clear way. And I know that we're not solving food insecurity, that's an economic problem, but food rescue helps alleviate it by creating increased access to food. So, by you creating this Growing for Good, you're helping provide predictable access for hunger relief organizations while also creating economic opportunities for farmers. So, it seems like one of those win-win-win situations. So, what's kind of like the next phase there? What's kind of in the future?
We're right now looking at, because given this moment we're in and seeing the need from all angles here, what does it look like to scale? It was because of how quickly this built, it was like we built a beautiful house together in 2020, but never wrote the blueprints. So we're in a moment right now where we're going back all those years and trying to figure out what is this and what structure is needed to scale it in without losing its core identity and the part that makes it really powerful and special and resilient. So that's a series of conversations we've been having. If anybody does stop at a PCC, we've been rounding up at the register, those simple questions. Would you like to round up to fund Growing for Good? And this year, just in 2025, just with people saying yes and no, that has brought in, I think we're at $370,000 as of yesterday, just with a passive people donating their change. So that feels good to me too, to feel like you can be part of something where we're able to do something as a community to support our regional food system and hopefully share the model beyond just the Puget Sound.
Yeah, that's amazing. So between the work that you're doing with the upcycling, the supply chain, and even you are doing a food rescue program. I know we haven't talked about it. Working with an external partner to help bring that. So it's really a multifaceted approach that PCC Markets is taking. So that's great. Any closing comments or thoughts, or I'll come back to you afterwards. But anything else?
I think I've said the word partner and partnership probably 25 times in the past few minutes, but that is the essential piece here. Nothing that we could do alone. It wouldn't work, and it definitely wouldn't be as impactful or as fun. And so just even within our grocery rescue program, grocery recovery program, the partnerships between each store and each agency, the partnerships between the organization and FDC, those relationships I think that's my final thought.
Yeah.
That is the secret sauce.
And there's a lot of invisible impact and stories that I'm sure that are happening every day. So that's awesome. Okay, thank you. You're off the hot seat now. Okay, we're moving over to Sarah here. All right, last but certainly not least is Sarah Freed. So she's a Senior Manager in Global Sustainability and Social Impact at Starbucks. She oversees the food rescue strategy and the award-winning Food Share program in the United States, and also an investment portfolio of $100 million into food waste reduction initiatives. So that's a lot. So maybe help deconstruct it and tell us a little bit more about the work you're doing.
Yeah, hi everyone. Starbucks, a little coffee shop down the street. I don't know if anybody went to Pike Place on the tour yesterday. So maybe I'll pick out some of that and talk a little bit more about what we're doing here in the U.S. So Starbucks has a food donation program called Food Share that operates at 10,000 stores across the U.S. And so for us with Food Rescue, I think the challenge that we were trying to solve is how do you take what's considered almost a nominal amount of food from each of these stores, so maybe 6 pounds of food from each store, 10,000 stores across the country daily. That aggregate amount is actually quite substantial. But to have and to coordinate 10,000 people driving daily to each of those stores to pick up 6 pounds of food just was not working for us. So we really had to look at one, what's our superpower? What do we have to offer to this? And what we felt is that we do have a strong logistics capability and a strong network to be able to actually source those stores with food every day. So we said, hey, what if when drivers are going to drop off food for the next day, they're also picking up prepared donations, putting it back in the truck, going to the next store, doing that throughout the evening, bringing it back to their centralized distribution center, consolidating it, and then doing one drop off to the food bank. And that has allowed us to nightly be able to service a consistent, reliable food recovery operation at 10,000 stores at scale across the US that is then donated to 45 food banks. So 10,000 stores donate to 45 food banks, and then that food is redistributed to communities via 800 agency partners. And so what this has unlocked for us, so when we looked at the impact that we were able to make switching to this model of reverse logistics, backhaul, increased food donations by 180%. And then it's also estimated that we are unburdening food banks by about 3 million hours annually that they can then spend doing what we think they do best, which is serving their community.
Wow. So obviously doing this type of logistics shift and change management across 10,000 locations, what were some of the kind of hard-won lessons? And, was it voluntary? Was it mandatory? Like, how did you deal with resistance at the local level and compliance?
Yeah, well, first I'll say we are about to enter 10 years of food share, so it's little incremental progress along the way. Some hard-won lessons, I think. A big lesson for us is, and a little bit of context, Starbucks food is prepared, pre-packaged food, right? So folks that are in the room that are dealing with raw ingredients or scraps. It was a very specific food type. And so one of the things that we learned early on is that we really had to work in partnership with our food design and food innovation team so that we are building products for that end use in mind. So now every single product that gets made has to check the box of having at least 72 hours of remaining shelf life past its sell-by date so that it can enter this food donation system and still get consumed while there's still plenty of shelf life left. I think so you talked about voluntary versus mandatory. We started out trying to win hearts and minds, I'll say, and we talk about winning hearts and minds a lot. And what it came down to was then you had a program that was built on passion and that you had some stores doing a really amazing job and then stores that weren't. And it was really hard to manage, again, a program at scale that only relied on the passion of a few instead of having the systems and operations in place that made it a requirement. And at the same time, we didn't want to swing the pendulum the whole other way to say, hey, this is the same requirement as it is to sweeping the floors or cleaning the bathrooms at night, because that kind of takes some of the pizzazz out of it as well. But it is a requirement. And so it is a standard operating procedure in stores that every night you have to prepare your food share or your food for donation. And the way that we did that is, it's part of the checklist that you go through at night. It's part of our inventory management systems. We have training, we have procedure guides, we have digital tools, we have partner engagement campaigns that we operate. And we also make sure that we're able to go back to stores and celebrate success, trying to deepen those relationships with those local food banks, local agencies to say, hey, here's one way that your store is supporting hunger relief in your community. Here are many other ways. You can nominate them for a neighborhood grant. You can go volunteer. We do a volunteer match. So for, I think it's the first 1,000 hours of volunteering, we will actually match your time with a donation. So using this as a foot in the door as a place to start, and then making sure that they have another pathway for how to continue and deepen that engagement with local hunger relief organizations.
That's great. I think that's really helpful for a lot of businesses, again, that have to scale the change, and sometimes you have to gamify or you bonus. I know there's some folks that create bonus incentives if they're complying, but it sounds like it's just built as part of the job. It's just part of the SOP of every day, which is obviously one great way. And the volunteer piece is really interesting. Do you find that there's greater affinity or compliance if they go and visit the charity? Like, we find that when we work with some stores and we see a dip in the diversion rates or donation rates, we would then take the store managers and the department staff to the charity. Once they start to see the impacts, we actually see kind of a boost back up to normal donation levels. Have you seen any of that at all?
Well, I'd love to dig into that data and look, but I think one piece, so this continuous learning and continuous improvement. So one thing that we didn't have, so backhaul was amazing, and we then had regional data, we had national data, but we didn't have store level data because, again, with the backhaul, they were then just consolidating and weighing all of the food from perhaps 600 stores at one location. And so we weren't able to go back to say, hey, store 123, what the heck, you didn't donate tonight. Like, what happened to your donations? Or store 345, like, you're doing a great job, keep at it. And so what we have just recently done is actually implemented what we call a store participation rate. So the challenge that we had was we couldn't require partners to actually spend the time marking out that food. We didn't have the labor hours to dedicate to it. And so we said, okay, what could we do? And so now when the driver goes into the store, they have to, before they can go to the next screen in their app, it has to say, did this store have donations available for pickup? And they have to say yes or no. And so now we actually have a metric that we can go to say, okay, hey store, what happened? It says there's no donations found. And that actually, when we implemented that, so we have about a quarter worth of data, that increased store participation rates by 12 percentage points when we were able to then go back to the store and actually hold them accountable for participating or not. And now I would like to go back and look at those two, overlay those numbers to say, hey, where we have good store participation and good volunteering, what has that done?
Yeah, see if there's a correlation.
Yeah.
I love that. And you have the benefit of time over 10 years, you're tweaking, refining, you continue to it's a learning less as a journey, right?
It's a journey.
But that's fantastic.
We're not at the end.
Not at the end. And I guess so my last question is, so a lot of food, like retailers and donors, they often say their total, like the total amount of food that was donated, but we don't really know the proportion of like how much of what's unsold versus what their rescue rate or capture rate is. We've had a conversation about what capture rate is, and Starbucks is starting to not only capture that, but also share that. I'm curious what that journey has looked like, and maybe some advice for others as the industry as a whole. Is that an important metric that we should maybe all kind of should we start to like have that conversation? We're standardizing what the rescue rate is for donors. So we've rescued 50% of our unsold food or whatever it might be, so that we're comparing apples to apples.
It's a really interesting conversation. I think it also opens up to what this access to data is and the importance of data transparency, data tracking, data automation. I don't know, my friends at Point B over here have done a really amazing job for us in being able to actually automate our data and give it to us more in real time so that we're able to make decisions and change kind of on the fly. So capture rate for us, or what's the math equation? It's so what is total food that is available or total food that is wasted? So via our IMS, our inventory management system, what is the amount of food waste that store has? And then we've done various audits to say, hey, we think at least 60% of that should be available for donation. So the other 40% is probably true waste, right? It dropped on the floor, it got burned, it was given to the wrong customer, somebody forgot to mark it out. We scale it back from there. And then we look at, again, through this data ingestion, how much of that food actually ended up at the food bank. So it's the amount of food that was actually donated according to how much was available for donation. And we still have a lot of area for improvement, which again is where that store participation rate and this yes or no, did they donate or not, has helped us actually go back to say, hey, this kind of subset of stores, we're holding you accountable to reaching this standard. And we've seen capture rate go up by, I think it's 7 or 8 percentage points just in the last 2 quarters.
Yeah, I think that's really, really interesting. And so one of the things that we're noticing is, like with retail, we know by the square foot how much shrink there typically is and what the rescue rate could be. And so you have like the kind of like the target rescue rate. And I think that the idea of industry benchmarks, so if retailers, because like I said, some are small, some have thousands of locations, but if we all know that about between 45 and 65% of shrink is rescuable by humans if it's done in a managed way. We know that a certain amount can go to farms and so forth. So if we all understand, that gives us that bench line and that baseline. So anyway, it's just a conversation I'd like to continue as in general. So Okay, I'm going to stop asking questions and I'm going to open it up to the audience. So I think there's some mics around. We'll feel free to ask a question to everybody, or like a group question or individual. And if not, I've got some more questions. So yes. Oh, just shout. Just give her.
Yeah, I won't say it's an exact science for sure, but there's a mix of things that we've found make it really ripe for opportunity, pun intended, I guess. But the main thing for us is, is there a high volume of food going to waste? And also, is there food insecurity? Most of the time, that is a check, right? Every county in America, there's food insecurity. But I think also for us, the landscape of being able to sustainably launch the operation and create, these value-rich partnerships is a really important consideration. I think when we were first thinking about scaling the model, it was like, how do we get into every city and figure this out? And in reality, partnerships and collaboration are probably the most important part of the process. So it also matters, who's there and, how can we help? Can we help? Are there gaps that we can fill? And I think that's where we've gotten really good at, is figuring out how can we play a supportive role that helps to bring others up. Kind of play this role of like a Switzerland of food rescue organizations, wants to partner with everybody and, just figure out like what does it take to make the end goal, ultimately centering the communities, come true. But I'd say, a good mix of funding, food, and need are the main things that we're looking for.
Yeah, go ahead, Sasha.
It's, yeah, similar.
I was going to say, can you repeat the question for those
The, the question, if I heard correctly, what is the revenue model for the croutons? So both the croutons and Growing for Good are set up with sustainability in mind, so for the croutons, we really want Fair Start to succeed with this. So they set the price based on the labor that it takes, as well as what the fair market value would be. We have a unique relationship with them because of our purchasing benefits, where we actually are purchasing the packaging for them. So we've been able to help. Our marketing team has helped them design the label. We're doing some of these in-kind things, so it's not a clean, direct vendor retailer relationship quite yet, but we really want to set it up so that they are successful financially. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yeah, they're one more, I wouldn't say just, they are one more amazing vendor that we work with, both in the retail packaging as well as in the salad bar croutons. There's potential future that we might start doing the crostinis as well as bread, the stuffing mix around holidays. So looking at what other breads that are in that artisan category and what those recipes could be. But similar with Growing for Good, when we set that up, we didn't ask the farmers to give the hunger relief agencies a discounted price. We asked them to set the wholesale price that they would set for any financial business relationship. And the first year, some of the agencies did not love that. They were looking at the cost of this local food and saying, we could get more from XYZ. Like, this doesn't seem like a good use of resources. And we have not heard anything like that after that first year. Now, the relationships many of these people have worked together for 5 years. The Hunger Relief Agency tends to be where the farm is bringing their excess product. It's based in this human-centered model that by asking the farm to set the price that they needed to sustain their own business, it's really created a win-win. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I think you were first, and then you go ahead.
We have, and I'd say this is also where, okay, think about logistics at scale and you think about local impact, and it gets a little dicey. So 10,000 stores, 45 food banks. That means that not all donations fit this definition of local. Because once the driver goes to all stores on the route, they then go back to the CDC, and then they will do one drop off to the food bank that is closest to them. And so oftentimes that means maybe it was Oregon Food Bank, but it could be actually a different food bank that that store then might not identify with this local. And so we're going through this right now where we've talked a lot about the program. We've talked a lot about, hey, by preparing your food share donations, you're helping to support local hunger relief. And they're like, no, we're not. That is not local to my store. And so now that backhaul has scaled everywhere, we're sort of a new challenge of how do we talk about it? Again, going back to winning hearts and minds, how do we talk about it in a way that is still inspirational, that captures partners' challenges, but also gives us the flexibility to talk about the nuance of logistics at scale. Anyway, it's a very hard message to try and get out. The other part of it is depending on what shift you're on, you may not touch food share at all, right? So it's usually the closing person, the closing barista's shift that they're preparing the food donation. So that store may not have, or that barista, if they're the morning shift, they may not be as well acquainted with the program and may not know a lot about it. Hopefully you saw in that store, now I'm going to follow up with you on which store this was. On the bakery case, last year we just sent clings that now it says this store donates food to, and then it names the food bank. So hopefully that was there, and hopefully our partners are seeing it. But yeah, so we definitely have a communications challenge that we're going through right now. Yeah, I'd say it's also one of the trade-offs too with backhaul, right? For let's say 50% of stores, so for 5,000 stores, where we donate to matches their definition for local. But the other half, it doesn't match their definition for local because it's getting donated to the closest food bank to the CDC. And again, when we stop to explain that, they're like, "Oh, cool, makes sense, thanks." But that's not an easy message to deliver in a clear, concise way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. Question in. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking it. It's a super important part of the equation for us. So with these wholesalers, they were typically paying about $120 per ton to throw the food away. And again, we're talking like 2 truckloads of tomatoes a day. So they'll try to donate as much as they can to local food banks or churches or whatever they could before we were there. But most of the time they're having to throw away everything. It leaves them with like a $1.5 million waste bill every year. And with wholesale produce, there's such a thin margin to make profit that some of the only way that you can really increase that margin is by cutting costs. So we were able to benchmark and say, all right, this is what you paid before we got in, just very clear, this is what you were paying, right? And then after a year, we visited it. And then after 2 years, we revisited it. And then now 3 years in, we're able to come back to the table and say, hey, we've had a good hand in helping to lower your waste costs. We've also found this great tax credit program through the Pennsylvania Department of Economic Development, where we've gotten you guys over $4.5 million in state tax credits. Is there some way that we can make this partnership financially viable for both parties here? And the answer now is yes. There is. There's a way for us to be able to earn revenue by helping them to lower their waste costs. I will tell you right now, it is not covering the entirety of our budget, but it is a start, and it's one of the things I really believe in for everyone in this room too. I'm more than happy to have conversations around this, but earning revenue through the work that we're doing is one of the clearest paths to sustainability. So we are not reliant on charitable funding for our entire existence, and I feel like we really need to start putting our foot down and figuring out the specific value we are providing to food businesses, because I guarantee you are, and it's a matter of how you're framing it, how you're communicating it, how you're measuring it. I'd be more than happy to help anyone in this room from what we've learned. But that's how we're kind of saving them money and then starting to now earn revenue to make our operations more cost efficient.
Yeah, thank you. Financing food rescue operations is on the mind of probably every agency and organization there is, and maybe a conversation for the new National Association. So we're at time here, so maybe what I'll do is just a quick fire. If there's one big ask you have or one thing on your mind or a tip you want to share, we're just going to close it up, and whoever wants to start, take it away.
I was just gonna yes and what Evan was saying too. So yes to operationalizing your business model, and I'd say my call to all the food donors out there. Food donation is just the first step. We all rely on a well-funded infrastructure of food recovery organizations. Don't let the food donations stop there. So we're encouraging to consider how you also provide food and funds, which is something that we do through our food share capacity grants. So again, the food gets there, it still has to be moved, stored, redistributed. And so if there was a model where it's for every pound of food that you donate, it also comes with funding to then support the infrastructure for redistributing that food, that is my plea.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, next.
Actually, I'll yes and that as well. Just to play off of what Rachel was talking about too, one thing that we've done successfully in Pittsburgh and some of our other partners at Food Rescue here are doing is taking excess donations and turning it into a value-added product with a local partner that they can sell, which raises awareness of our mission, but also brings some funds back to us, because I know that is the biggest challenge facing all of our organizations right now. So figuring out how to sort of monetize or bring earned income into the business, the nonprofit, is definitely, I think, one of the next frontiers for food recovery.
Ooh, I think my two thoughts that I'm having right now, one is collaborate, like find all the places. We don't have to do these things alone. There are experts in this room that are doing all sorts of different things, like find each other and find ways to come together and work together. And then the second, I think just popped right out of my head. So
I just love you guys. I love everybody in this room. Like, you guys are the coolest people ever, and just so happy to be able to share a room with everybody here, and so many incredible organizations. Shout out Food Forward, shout out FarmLink, and Harlem Grown too. Like, so many incredible organizations here, and just so proud to be partnered with so many people in this room. Love you guys.
Yeah.
And join the National Food Recovery Association.
Yeah. That's awesome. Oh yeah.
I remembered what I forgot. In those two examples that I gave, like that did not go. It was not easy. It took 4 years to make some croutons. Like, just stick with it. Like, these things take a long time, and where you end up might not be where you thought you would in the beginning. But I think that perseverance.
Yes, the line to the path to success is not linear. It's more like this, and don't give up, persevere. It's about building momentum. So thank you to everybody for your insights, your energy, your tenacity. Thanks to everybody who showed up today. I know that there's the International Showcase starting in 10 minutes, and go and create new ideas and be forth America.